The woods and meadows of Northern Virginia are full of invasive, non-native shrubs that take over the landscape and crowd out the native species. These invasive shrubs are so thick in many of our natural areas that people and wildlife can no longer move around. They are a threat to our wooded areas because they prevent the next generation of tree seedlings from establishing themselves. Because these garden escapees did not evolve here, our native insects cannot digest their leaves, which also starves out our baby birds and other wildlife that depend on those insects for food. Adult birds are sometimes forced to eat their fruit, which is one of the ways that the plants spread to other areas. Even the deer don't like them. In this video, we'll talk about 5 of the most common invasive shrubs in our area and how to control them. These were all brought here by humans, but are rarely being planted on purpose anymore. We'll start with autumn olive shrubs, which get so large that some might think they are trees. Because they are multi-stemmed, they are still considered shrubs. They used to be planted along roadsides for erosion control, but now are invading our woods everywhere. The easiest way to recognize them is from the backside of the leaves, which are silvery with a lot of tiny dots. They have yellow flowers in the spring and berries that turn red in the summer and fall. The wood is dark gray and smooth, except for the younger branches, which are brown. Sometimes you will see long thorns. Like most shrubs, if you cut it down, it will sprout again. But a worse problem is that sometimes it will also send up root sprouts, so instead of just one shrub, now you have dozens. This doesn't happen every time, but it is bad when it does. To prevent that, you need to do something about the roots. Small ones can be pulled out of the ground. When you cut down a larger one, the best thing to do is to paint the stump with concentrated herbicide. If you are being paid for the work, you will need a license to use herbicides. Thorny Eleagnus is in the same genus as autumn olive. The stems can grow far up into trees and smother them. The thick leaves are evergreen and silver on the underside. The flowers in late summer are inconspicuous, but have a lovely, spicy scent. Like autumn olive, the twigs can be sharp like thorns. Bush honeysuckles are another shrub that can get very large. There are several invasive species, but the most common is Amur honeysuckle. There are some bush honeysuckles that are native further south, but not in northern Virginia. The flowers look very similar to the invasive Japanese honeysuckle vine, which also should be removed. Amur honeysuckle is very easy to spot in the late fall because it holds onto its light green leaves longer than other plants, and you may also see its red berries in groups of 4. The ridges along the tan-colored stems make it easy to recognize any time of year, and if you cut them, you will see that they are usually hollow. The leaves of Amur honeysuckle come to a point, which is a little different from the other invasive species. Be careful not to confuse it with the native spice bush, which has a very different stem. Fortunately, it is possible to pull even fairly large bush honeysuckles out by the roots. A particularly bad invasive shrub is Multiflora Rose. You need a suit of armor to walk through the woods where these have taken over. It is a climbing rose that can reach 15 feet and smother small trees. If you cut them back repeatedly, you will slow them down, though they will regrow. If you try to pull them out by the roots, the stems will often break off, but you can use a pickaxe or shovel to dig them out. The thorns are hooked like a cat's claw. In the fall and winter, you can see the red rose hips. The clusters of flower of Multiflora Rose are almost always white, though rarely they can be pink. The younger stems are round and typically green, though sometimes they can be red. The older woody stems are brown. This is why it is a good example of why it is risky to depend on color to make a plant identification. There are several native plants that can be confused with this rose. Where it grows, it is common to also find native blackberries and greenbrier. The most common type of native greenbrier has round green stems like a rose, but the thorns stick straight out and change color from green to yellow to brown at the very tip. Blackberries also have curved thorns, though not quite as hooked. There are several species of invasive blackberries, but the native ones have long ridges on their woody stems and leaves that are larger and darker green than rose leaves. The real challenge comes from telling Multiflora Rose from the native pasture rose and swamp rose. Both of these have pink flowers. The swamp rose hips are larger, but the best way to tell them apart is from the stipule, which is this widening at the base of the leaf stems. The ones on Multiflora Rose look much hairier. Wineberry is one of several invasive rubus species. They are very easy to uproot. It is very easy to distinguish from the native blackberries because the stems are covered with red hairs. The underside of the leaves are silver. In our next video, we will talk about some non-native shrubs that are also invasive and yet are still being planted in yards by people who don't understand the terrible damage that they do to our local ecosystem.